Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. I'm David Steenoik, the president of Macatawa Technologies. Welcome to our webinar for remote workforce collaboration. We're going to talk to you today about tips and tricks using Microsoft Teams and Office 365. This is a new experience for us as Macatawa Technologies. We've always done our lunch and learns during the breakfast hour. We've called it breakfast bites in the past. As you're most likely like us, you're working from home, and it doesn't make sense for us to all gather together, unfortunately. We miss seeing your smiling faces, and we miss the delicious breakfast that we're so used to having. And we look forward to seeing you guys again soon. As you're joining us today, the purpose of today's meeting, as I'm sure you know, is to kind of learn about this tool. You may have never even heard of Microsoft Teams, but it's a great remote workforce collaboration tool. And as we're all in this giant work from home experiment, this is a tool that we think that during this time could be beneficial to you and your organization, as well as we don't know what's going to come out on the other side of this. Business may be changing the way we work, the way we collaborate together, and this could definitely be a helpful tool. So since none of us know how long this will go on, we thought we'd use this as an opportunity to introduce you guys to this. So now is the time to adapt. We're all working from home. We've got some more downtime right now. So now is the time to really think about how we operate, how we're adapting, how we're going to improve, how we can collaborate together. You may have heard the saying that necessity is the mother of invention. So I think that we all need to figure out different ways of working and collaborating as we're out of our offices. And just like you guys, we are also learning and adapting as we go. So this presentation today our goal is to be wrapped up by 1 o'clock. As we go, if you have questions, please look in the bottom right-hand corner or in the right half of your screen there. There should be a ask a question or ask a question button there. Feel free to ask as we go. This is a Microsoft Teams live event. It does not give you the opportunity to speak with us through your microphone, so this is in listen-only mode. So our presenters today are Tony Dykstra and Steve Dinka from our office at Macatawa Technologies. And they've put together a great presentation. So without further ado, take it away, Tony.
Thanks, Dave. Hello, everybody. Like Dave said, this is a new experience for everybody. We've been utilizing Teams in our office now for a few months. So this is a new experience, just in general, hosting a remote presentation. But at the same time, it's our first time doing a presentation to the public through Microsoft Teams. So it's very exciting. You'll be able to see that the tool is a very versatile tool. It allows a lot of collaboration. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So Microsoft Teams, we want to just give you a little bit of an overview. Like Dave mentioned before, you may have heard of it. You may even be using it a little bit, but you may not have heard of it. If you haven't heard of it, this is what we're going to cover today. Just a little overview of what is it, what is it not, who's allowed to use it, who can use it, and is there benefit to using it. So what is Microsoft Teams? More or less, Microsoft Teams is just a tool to communicate and collaborate efficiently and effectively with your coworkers. It gives you the option to do quick questions, perform conference calls, video calls with individuals or groups of people. You can do file sharing, screen sharing. All of these things can be accomplished through Teams. Teams being an effective tool used for businesses, you may be worried about it being a nuisance during the day. This is not your MSN Messenger, so it's not a replacement of email or phone calls either. This is simply a tool. It's not magic. It's not going to solve all the problems that your organization has, but it will further communication. It will help you collaborate more as a team and hopefully allow you to just benefit from being in the know a lot more than we usually are. Who can use Microsoft Teams? So anybody using an Office 365 business plan can use it. It should be included in your licensing for your organization. If you do have questions about your organization's licensing, if this is included, and if it's not, what it would take to be included, feel free to reach out to me. Shoot me an email, tony@makatawatechnologies.com, or give our main number a call. That'll be transferred over to me, and I'd be happy to go through any of those questions with you. The biggest question, why use Microsoft Teams? What's the benefit to using it? And the simplest answer is just going to be enhanced communication and collaboration. There's going to be fewer emails. You don't have to send an email to somebody for a quick question anymore. You can just open up a chat and kick it over to them. Remote workers can start feeling like they're part of the team. You can do video calls with them and see them, quote unquote, face to face. It just helps that collaboration and making people feel like they're all together. It gives you improved meeting experiences. And the best part about this is you can use it on a Mac, you can use it on a PC, on your Android phone, you can use it on your iPhone. It's cross-platform. It just works across the board and it's very seamless throughout. So as you can see here, this is just a screenshot of Microsoft Teams and what the actual interface looks like. What Steve and I will be going through today is the tabs on the left-hand side of the screen here. You'll see the activity, you'll see chat, you'll see Teams, meetings, calls, files, and there will be a couple other ones that we'll touch on as well with different integrations. But as you can see here, this just gives you a very nice overview of what Teams is, what it looks like, and you can see some of that cross-platform availability as well, as there's an iPhone there that they're taking a video call on. It's a very, very powerful tool. So during this time, as a lot of us are working from home, working remotely, I'm sure you've all heard of Zoom. One of the things we wanted to do is talk to you a little bit about Teams versus the Zoom experience. What are the pros, some of the cons, what it all looks like. So there's a nice little illustration here that just gives you more or less 4 talking points about the benefit of Microsoft Teams and why you should go down this road instead of going the Zoom route. So to the first point here, it's more than just meetings. Like we mentioned earlier, this integrates natively with Hosted Exchange, with Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, as well as a lot of other integrations that are part of it. You can go ahead and have a dedicated document library, and it stores everything in SharePoint in its own SharePoint channel. It's all integrated, it's all in a single place, it's just very easy to use. The intelligent communications, you can go ahead and record meetings, you can record conversations, it shows you your chat history, it'll make meeting attendee recommendations. So if you're putting together a meeting or a chat and you usually have a group of people that talks and you forget somebody, Microsoft Teams will let you know that there's somebody else that may need to join this chat and just remind you of that.
Hey, Tony, this is Dave.
Dave.
I think we're having a slight technical difficulty here. It doesn't look like this is actually broadcasting out. It's still at the first slide that says the meeting will begin shortly. So it doesn't look like this has actually gone live yet.
If somebody could put in the question and answers, let me know if you guys are seeing this or not.
There's always something, isn't there, Tony?
There certainly is. Let me do a refresh on my screen. All right, let's take a look at that. Is there? Okay, yeah, people are seeing it. Okay, yeah, the responses that I'm getting here is the Teams versus Zoom is up. Oh.
Skip to live broadcast. All right, so if you're not seeing the current slide there, and it might just be if you're using the Teams app. So Looks like we are going live here. We're getting a lot of responses. So go ahead, Tony. Sorry for the interruption. I'll let the two messages, I'll respond to the two people who are not seeing it live here. So
All right,
sorry
sounds
about that.
good. No, thanks,
Thanks,
Dave.
Donald.
Appreciate it. That's
Yeah.
good. And that's what we're here for, to help each other out too. So as we're going through this, if you have questions, please put it in that question and answer. Thank you for your replies here. That was very helpful. So going back to the Teams versus Zoom conversation and what that looks like with that intelligent communications there, just the ability to have a team or a group of people being able to communicate that way, or just the simple ability to have just a chat conversation that's opened up. You can have meeting notes throughout these things too. It's just a really intelligent way to communicate. To the third point here, we have accelerating product roadmap. That's being part of Microsoft Office 365's lineup. Obviously, Microsoft is continuing to pour a lot of money into this, the development of these products. It's only going to continue. They're going to continue pushing forward. They're going to continue enhancing. It's only going to keep making things better. To the last point here, just keep it simple. Most of you are using Office 365 already for your email. Some of you are using it for the productivity suite, using your Office, your Word, your Excel, your Outlook. This tool is already part of it. So let's keep it simple. Let's keep everything in a single platform. It shares, there's tight integration. It just makes it very easy to use. So all of that being said, one of the biggest benefits of using Team over Zoom is security. You won't have to worry about any Zoom bombs like you've heard about in the news, uninvited guests, people just entering the meetings when they're not supposed to. Teams is a very secure platform. In addition to the fears of people jumping in, it's encrypted end to end. Knowing that your communication and your connection is secure just gives you peace of mind to focus on your meetings and your collaboration and your communication without having to worry about any of the other stuff going on here. So with that, let's jump into some of the points that we talked about earlier with
Real
the
quick,
highlight.
Tony, before we jump into the activity feed, skip back one. That was Microsoft Teams versus Zoom. But what about Microsoft Teams versus Skype, or Skype for Business? Could you or Steve briefly touch on that? What's the difference between Teams and Skype?
Yeah, I'll Steve, actually, if you want to take that one, I'll let you.
Sure, Tony. Thank you. Thanks for your question, Dave. So Skype is a last generation video and voice conference technology or platform, and it has been rolled by Microsoft into Teams. Microsoft purchased Skype a few years back, and the same technology that they use for Skype is now part of Teams, but Skype lacked the collaboration function, ergo the ability to share files, to create channels, have private chats between people. So to answer your question, Dave, the difference between Teams and Skype is that Teams provides wider collaboration because it brings into it the chat function, it brings into it the sharing of files.
Gotcha. So Teams is replacing Skype.
And yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Teams is replacing Skype.
All right, going into the details of Teams and what that is and how it's used. The activity feed. The activity feed is going to be one of these things. It's just your one-stop shop to see all of the activity that's done of any team that you're a part of, any meetings that you're a part of, or any chats that you've been a part of. So you'll see in the screenshot here that we have, you can see different versions of activities that have taken place. So you can see that somebody's liked one of the replies that you had in there. Somebody mentioned you in a particular team, or there's the integration portion where somebody sent a pull request. So this is the place where you're going to get a lot of those different the different information of everything that's going on in your organization. Now, the downside of that is it can be incredibly overwhelming seeing all of these different communication points coming in, especially when you're trying to find something. The benefit of this is you can actually change your view when you're looking at that activity feed. So if you click the feed button on the top left here, you can actually drop it down and show only the replies that you've done. So only things that are specifically things that you've replied to, it will show that. In addition, you can filter this viewpoint by showing any unreads, any mentions, anybody that's replied to any Teams message or chat that you've had. If anybody liked anything that you had, if somebody tried to call you and you weren't able to get it, or like I mentioned with some of that integration, we have some of these apps here. So you can filter this feed by all of these things here, which makes it a lot easier to find what you're looking for if you're filtering it through the activity feed.
So this is Steve. I'll be explaining how to get up and running with Teams. Back to the point that Tony had made previously, Teams is an Office 365 product. So those of you who are already using Office 365 platform probably have access to Teams. There are some licensing requirements for that. You could go offline and talk to Tony later on to see if you have that, but most likely if you're using Office 365, you do have access to the Team platform. So on to our next slide, then Teams. What are they? So how do you create them and how do you edit an existing team? So Teams is essentially a department. You can think of it that way in the simplest form. It's a collaboration of employees to pursue a single goal. So in the simplest way, it's say HR is a team, production, management. Those are groups of people who share a common goal and have a lot of the same files, same resources together. So within the teams, you can perform various functions. You can post chat messages between team members. You can share files. You can share OneNote, or you can just share files directly. So on to the next slide. Once you understand that, how do you create a team? Creating a team is very simple. From within the Teams app, you can go to the bottom left and just click join or create a team. When you create a new team, all you need to do is just name that team and then decide what employees you want to be members of the team. The only requirement is that those employees have to have the licensing on those accounts to become members of the team. Once again, Tony can further explain offline what those licensing requirements are. So once you have a team created, you can also edit or change that existing team. So say somebody quits or somebody moves from one team to another, you can go into the team itself and then change what teams they are members of. You can also change their permissions, what they have access to, whether they manage that team. On to the next slide for managing a team. You can see at the top, there are members, channels, settings, analytics, and apps. So members, obviously you can add, remove. Channels are sub parts of the team. I'll explain shortly. And then settings are the multiple settings, including if it's a public team, what the guest can access if you allow that, and other various features. Another important part of Teams is channels. Channels are a way to, as Tony had mentioned, to keep Microsoft Teams from becoming a messenger application where you're constantly getting barraged with chats, information, requests that don't really pertain to your particular function in the company. A channel you can think of as really a conversation. So it becomes between maybe two people within that team. Maybe it's a conversation between people with the same job function with that team, but the goal is to keep the information that only pertains to you within a channel. So that way you don't have to ask a question that not everybody in the team really needs to know about, or create a meeting between people who don't need to be part of that meeting. So it's just a way to keep it clean, and it's something that needs to be thought out well before you start using Teams, just to make sure that you get off on the right foot. The channels do have access to the same resources that a team has. So because they lie beneath the team or they're a subpart of the team, they can have access to the same resources. So to create a channel, all you need to do is, once you have a team made, is to the right of that, you see the 3 dots. You just click on that, and that little menu will pop up, and you simply just add a channel by naming it and deciding who wants to be a member, need to be a member of that channel. It's really that easy. Once again, they're just conversations, so they just simplify the communications. So for adding channel, so the next is managing channel or calendars. Sorry, the wonders of live. So calendars. One aspect that was mentioned earlier was Skype and the difference between Skype and Teams. So as I said, Skype is being absorbed into Teams, and this is kind of the function that Skype played, or the role it plays within Teams, is the meetings part of it. So unlike Skype, though, Skype was just you create a meeting and you get a group of people together and you do video chat or audio chat. Team meetings allows you to share resources also, so you can share files during that chat. You can bring people in, add to the calendar. It's much more integrated than Skype meeting ever was, as since it's Microsoft, everything kind of flows across the same platform. So how do you create a meeting? To create a meeting, it's as easy as going to calendar, and in the upper right hand corner, there's a start meeting or plus meeting, and you just click on that, and then you can decide the date, who's a member of it. You can type something email, and then they will be sent an email. If you look below the next slide, there is an example of this in Outlook. Very familiar to you if you've ever created meetings in Outlook. Same information you need, and the nice thing is it shows you a link at the bottom of that, which the attendee can then click on to jump into the meeting. So it's very simple and very integrated and familiar. Another option is if you don't want to schedule a meeting, there's a Meet Now function. So the nice thing about the Meet Now function, it doesn't require you to schedule anything. You don't got to go to the calendar or prearrange it. You just click Meet Now, and once you're in that meeting, so once you've started it, you can add people. So you can click on join, and then they'll get a notification that they're being invited to a meeting. Much simpler, very quick and easy. The next slide will indicate what it looks like. So this is an example of a video chat, and that's what you'd see. The nice feature of the team meetings is, from my experience, is it's very collaborative in that only the people that it brings up people who are speaking. In addition, it also, if you like, can have captioning at the bottom. So if, say, you're in a noisy environment and don't want to leave the speaker on or don't want to mute it, you can read what's being said to people and between the attendees, and it works very well. Very easy to understand. So
yes,
next,
Steve,
Tony.
Real quick before we move on here, Tony, this is the Meet Now is a function that we use quite a bit. This is where, you know, rather than pick up your phone or whatever, if you want to have 3 or 4 people in there, and you don't have to share your webcam. I don't know how all of you are starting to look after 3-4 weeks in quarantine. We're all starting to get a bit shaggy, and our standards for, I guess, maybe how we're preparing for our day have gone down a little bit. So you don't have to share your webcam. It works really well for audio, multiple people and everything. But yeah, this is where we've spent quite a bit of our time of just getting a quick meeting going. One of the nice things too I found about this is I might start the meeting and I'll call Tony and Steve and we're talking about this. I can hang up and the meeting continues on. So I don't have to be, even though I'm the one who started, I don't have to be on the call. I can hop off. I can go take another call. I can then go rejoin that meeting if it's still in progress. So this is kind of nice. And it also has some additional functionality that we aren't able to show you here, but as far as when you're in the meeting, you can do chats on the side, different things there. So yeah, this is where we spent a lot of our time so far here.
And if you don't mind me, Dave, adding on to your comment, another feature that I found really nice is the ability to jump between voice and video. So you can start with a video call, and at some point, if you don't want to continue as a voice call, you can then disable your camera and continue as a voice call. Very nice to be able to jump back and forth between those two methods.
Great. As we just went through teams and channels and calendars, that's a very organization-wide. Sometimes you don't want to have, you don't want to communicate with the entire team or all of the employees or the entire company. So that's when you look at doing personal communication. That's when we jump into chats and individual calls. So the chat feature, what is it? It's just a quick and easy way to communicate between individuals or specific groups of people. The reason you would do this is to discuss temporary subjects or just have short conversations. A lot of times it's just you have a quick question or you have to meet about a particular or you want to discuss a particular subject or whatever it is. You don't need the entire company to be aware of it, so you wouldn't put it under a channel in Teams. It's just between you and another person or you and a few people, and it works very well. So you can create a conversation very easily by just clicking create. You can rename the group. You can do a lot of things, and I'll show you that on the next screenshot here. So in the chat, obviously, you'll always get notifications. You'll see the little red one there that shows you that there's a new chat. There's something that you haven't seen. It will alert you to that, so you can go ahead and open up that chat tab. And that's where you'll see all of the chats that have taken place between you and any number of individuals over the past. You'll see your most recent one there. Chances are it's going to be bold because there'd be something new. But you can go ahead up at the top here. You can change this name. Typically, it's going to be the person's name or the people's names of that group chat that you're part of. You can rename it to anything that you want it to be renamed to. The nice thing in here with this chat, you can also share files, show the activities of the chat. You can also have integrations like adding notebooks or OneNote, anything like that. So that is very, very versatile. You can do screen sharing. You can place a call with these people as well. So if you're chatting and you decide, you know what, hey, I actually need to talk to you about something, up at the top right, you'll see the option to have a video call or just a voice call. You know, like Steve was talking about earlier, where you're talking to somebody and let's say you have to pull somebody into that conversation. Steve and I are talking and we realize, hey, you know what, I want Dave to be a part of this conversation as well. You can just go ahead over here and you can click your the little two people here with a plus sign. Go ahead and click that. That'll show you the attendees that are part of this conversation, and it will also allow you to add people to it. It will also allow you to jump out of that chat, to leave that chat if you no longer want to be a part of it as well.
Yeah, Tony, quick question on that last slide there. We had somebody wondering what are bots. T-bot, that this is just a screen capture we stole from the internet, since a lot of our stuff is our confidential information internally or offhand. The little T-bot there, that could either be a nickname for somebody or that could be an integration of maybe something from a third-party app.
Based on the shape of the icon, that is going to be a third-party app.
Okay. So if you don't mind me jumping in on that, I might be able to shed some light on that. So amongst many integrations, you're right, Tony. There are bot integrations, which are basically answer bots. Kind of like for most people, when you call, say Comcast, and you get the automatic that says, "Hey, say these phrases," and it'll connect to the right person. These bots can run on your team's environment and answer commonly asked questions for you.
All right, hopefully that helped. The next tab that we want to talk about is the calls. So what are calls? How do we make a new call? Can I create a group call multiple people? Can I see who called me? Calls is going to function very similar to just your standard phone. The difference with these calls is they're only within Teams. So let's say you want to talk to somebody, you don't want to have a chat, you don't want to create a meeting, you don't want to do anything, you can just go to the calls tab. You can do a standard call, you can do a video call with a coworker. You have the ability to add people down the road if you wanted to, or just keep it a one-on-one if you wanted as well. So here's a screenshot of my calls page. Basically on the left-hand side, you can see the different options where you can add speed dials. If there's people, if you're working in a larger organization and there's people that you talk to very regularly, you can add that to your speed dial. Your contacts list, that's going to show you all of your contacts that you've added to that. You can manage that list, you can remove people, you can add people. This contacts list is entirely personal. There's history there, shows you all your history of the calls that you've made, the calls that have been made to you, all within Teams. Again, this isn't going to show you your history of your desk phone or your cell phone or anything else. Only the calls within Teams are going to be displayed through here. So here's a screenshot of my history, just the conversations and the phone calls that I've had with people over the past few days with just quick touch and base or whatever it is. This just shows me the incoming calls, the outgoing calls, any calls that I missed. The other option that you have here is to set up a voicemail for it. Again, this isn't going to be a voicemail for your desk phone or your cell phone, but it is going to allow you to have a message played. If you're unable to take a Teams call, they can leave a message. You'll be able to pull that up and reply to that when you hear it and get a chance to do that.
Two things to note here, Tony, before we move on, skip back once there. Under the calls, would this replace somebody's phone system, you think, or is this supplemental to a phone system?
No, this is going to be only Teams. So this does not make outbound calls. This only makes calls within your team. So I can call Dave, I could call Steve, but I couldn't call the customer down the road from this. This is only going to be your communication within Teams.
And then one of the other things too is with chat. One of the things as we were talking about implementing something like Teams or Slack or any one of these programs, one of my biggest, not fears, I guess, but more of a hesitation was around, I don't want to have MSN Messenger or AOL Messenger running that something on the screen that I need to be required to reply to at all times. I guess one of my biggest hesitations was that one of the reasons that a lot of people would make of switching to Teams was, well, it can, in a lot of ways, replace your email. And I thought, well, already one of the challenges that we have is, internally communicating with each other and we're busy and everything else, that if you get too many emails, well, wouldn't it just transition to a chat? And so there is sort of that, I guess it takes a little bit of thought or culture of what are your expectations around how much time it takes to respond to a chat or to an email. But it certainly has not been as disruptive as something like an AOL or an MSN Messenger would have been back in the day.
Yeah, that's very true. And again, like I said at the beginning, this isn't something that's going to replace your email. It's not going to replace your phone system. It's not going to replace any of these tools that you use today. It's going to be an enhancement or an addition to. How many times do we get an email in our inbox for a quick question that gets buried or it gets missed and then somebody drops the ball with something? Well, with this, there's a lot more visibility because to a certain extent it's more spread out, but this is more for those quick, just one-off questions, not something that has a lot of details in it like you typically put in an email. Good.
So the next integration or benefit of Teams is its integration with your company files. So Teams does utilize SharePoint. If you're familiar with that, it is an online file storage and organization platform that Microsoft uses. And the benefit of this is that allows the sharing of files between different employees, but within Teams, it even allows permission differences between different teams, different channels. You can do collaboration. So as Tony and I prepared these slides, we were able to edit the PowerPoint slides at the same time, so I could see changes he had made. This would work both between online Office 365 apps and also on the locally installed Office 365 platform. So this is a great advantage. So you can be working a slide, chatting with someone at the same time, discussing it, and updating things, which is much quicker than having the back and forth via email or the conversation on the phone. You change it, you have to send it to them, they send it back to you. Much quicker, much simpler and more efficient. So the next slide kind of gives a little demonstration of the different options for files in Teams. On the left hand side, you see obviously it's new, so you can create a new file. New files are of the Office, Microsoft Office type, so you're talking Word, PowerPoint, Excel, those types of files. You can create those. Those will be then uploaded to that channel or to the team under which they're created. You can also share it between teams, so it's not just limited that way, but it will generally be saved underneath wherever you create it when you're accessing at time. The upload function is really nice because if you have a local file and you want to upload, you can do that. Then it becomes a collaborative file. Once again, it has to be an Office file, but you can collaborate on it. The copy link is nice. So say somebody outside the company you want to share a file with, if you have guests set up, you can then email that link and they can get into that file. They can edit it if they need to. It doesn't offer the collaboration, simultaneous collaboration, because they're not a team member, but they can change it, and then you'll see that because they have a link back to the SharePoint location online. The last option I wanted to cover was the download. So if you are going offline, you have a presentation, you don't have internet, you can then download, of course, and it's local. That doesn't allow you to collaborate, but it does give you the ability to access it. So it's not only stored online. And the added cloud storage kind of ties within the next discussion that Tony will have, which is integration with other platforms. Microsoft does support integration outside of just the Microsoft platform. So next we'll be discussing integration with Tony.
Yeah, so to Steve's point, and as you guys have seen over the past presentation that we've been going through, there's a lot of integration within Teams. It integrates with SharePoint, it integrates your meetings with your Outlook calendar. There's just a lot of integrations, things that you wouldn't always think about, and there's other things that would be really nice or beneficial if you were aware of it. And one of those is OneNote. I wanted to make sure that you knew that the integration with OneNote and Teams is very strong. So I'm assuming that some of you are using OneNote. I'm hoping many of you are using OneNote. It's just a very powerful note-taking tool. And the fact that it integrates so well with Teams is great. So what I wanted to do is show you just how smoothly it integrates. This is a screenshot of the OneNote that you can see on the left-hand side here. It's just going to be an additional tab, just an additional place where you can go and you can see all of the notebooks that you've created in OneNote. So if you're familiar with OneNote and you know that you probably have a main notebook that you use everything, you have different chapters or tabs within that, and then you have your individual subjects within that as well. So this is actually sort of structured like Teams in a certain sense, but the fact that you can see all of this, even my personal notebook, I can see this right here within Teams without having to leave and open up another app is hugely beneficial. The other nice thing about this integration isn't just that I can see my personal one, but as you can see here, I see a couple other ones that they've actually been created from within Teams. So this next screenshot here actually shows the MT company team. That is the notebook that's selected, and this was actually created within the Teams up top here. So this wasn't generated in OneNote, the actual application. It was made in Teams, and it built a notebook and put it in there. The benefit of this is, as Steve talked about the Teams and how that's a big group of people that collaborates on different things, this is a place where you can go and you can have a running note of different subjects or different places that you need to have communication, where it's not something simple you want to put in more like a chat window. You actually want to have a running notebook with different things there. So as you can see on this next slide, this is the exact same thing, but you can see we're in the Teams tab up here. So you can see that, the MT company team that includes everybody in our organization, our general conversation has a notebook, so we could build off from here should we have things that are going to require either dissemination of information or additional collaboration that doesn't have to be populated in more of a chat field. So it's very, very helpful to have this here. To be able to see the integrations. There's a lot of them. It integrates with a lot of different apps. OneNote is one that I use quite frequently. We use as an organization, but there's a lot of third-party applications that Teams will integrate with as well. You can see on the left-hand side here, we have Bonusly. That's a kind of an acknowledgement program that we have within our office. That integration just sends out the positive news or feedback over to the company team as well, and just keeps us in the loop there. So there's a lot of built-in applications. It's a very powerful tool. There's a lot of different ways that you can collaborate, not just in Teams, but by utilizing a lot of those third parties as well. So as a recap, we've talked about a lot of things today. We wanted to give you an overview, a highlight of what Microsoft Teams is, what it can do, how you could use it in your organization, how it could benefit you. If this is something that you think would benefit you, you don't have it set up right now, please reach out to me. We'd love to help you get that going. A lot of times you can download the application, you can look at it and jump into it, just to kind of get your feet wet. But when it comes to the deployment for your organization, it does take planning. It does take some thought involved, especially when you're structuring some of those teams and those channels, just making sure that that's done correctly. So please reach out, let me know if there's something that we can help you with there. With an overview here, the activities tab that we talked about, is just going to be your feed that shows activities that are done in Teams that you're part of, chats and calls that you were a part of, or other items people tagged you in.
And the teams will centralize the information pertaining to certain employees, and the channels will make sure that that information that the teams is being managed amongst the teams doesn't become overwhelming, that it is a conversation between people that need to have that conversation, and people that don't have to keep checking every time something's thrown out there. Calendar, it's an easy way to collaborate or to create collaboration by scheduling meetings. You can even schedule meetings immediately. So if you have a quick jump to session, you can do that. You can also schedule meetings and invite guests outside of the company.
So the chat and the calls, like we talked about, the chat is just an area to have that brief, quick discussion with a single or group of coworkers. Can be used to initiate voice or video calls, as well as share any of your screen sessions if you wanted to do that. Calls are just going to be used to call a single or a group of coworkers. It's used similarly to chat, but it's not intended for the text portion of that.
And Teams also helps with your information. Your files, of course, are very important to the company, and making sure that those files get to the right people, that they have those files easily accessible to collaborate, and they're organized, saves a lot of time and effort, especially given the circumstances nowadays where we're working remotely. It's a lot more difficult to contact someone to find out where they stuck that file, to find out that that file that normally would be on the servers on the local computer because they aren't in the office.
And then lastly here we have our integrations like we just talked about. Office 365 is very tightly integrated with Teams. There's a lot of other third-party applications that are integrated as well. It just can bring together a lot of tools used under a single place to view or interact with it. The biggest benefit is that collaboration piece, the fact that you can see all of this in a single pane, but you can also collaborate with other individuals or groups or your entire team if you want to. So overall, the recap of Microsoft Teams, it's a tool for collaboration. It's a tool to increase your communication as a team, to add continuity to remote workers. If this is used and deployed correctly, it can be a big asset to your organization to help keep everybody on the same page. That's what we had for today.
So Tony, we do have a number of questions that have come in here. A lot of them I could get to quickly enough. So I'll kind of go through the list, and if you and Steve could answer these. One question was about Teams versus Slack. We had talked about Teams versus Zoom or Skype, but we did not mention Slack.
Yeah, I'm going to have to defer to either you or Steve on that. I have very limited experience with Slack.
Yeah, so Slack is a tool that's been out considerably longer. As far as I understand, it was developed a lot more programmers got involved in this. You can have, the concept is fairly similar as far as channels. You can set up just sort of the same way you can do in Teams with channels and everything. I know my wife works at Hope. They've implemented Slack recently. I think for me, the biggest thing is that if you're already using Office 365 or your Microsoft environment, Teams is the natural fit. The integration is just so tight, and the development, it's only improving exponentially right now. So I would say if you're not using Office 365, or if you're using G Suite or any of the Google products, then it might be worth taking a look at Slack. But for the most part, if you're already in the Microsoft ecosystem, Teams would be the much more natural choice. Next question here is regarding only being able to see. So like if when we were showing the Meet Now section earlier, you can only see 4 people at a time in Teams. Is that true? Is there a way to see the whole team at the same time?
I can take that call. So at the moment, it's limited, but I do know that I have been reading on multiple forums that there have been a lot of requests, and Microsoft is currently working on allowing the viewing of more people within the Teams environment. So since this is this product is still in development as far as it is polished, but they're adding a lot of features, that will probably change in the short future.
Yeah, that's one of the advantages of Zoom is that, you know, we had, for instance, a Zoom meeting Sunday with our group from church, and, you know, it's nice to be able to see all the people on there. But yeah, unfortunately with Teams, there are ways that you can pin people. So for instance, if you only want to see 2 or 3 different people, you can kind of pin them to the screen. But yeah, unfortunately, as far as the seeing people, on the video part, definitely, I would say Zoom has currently the advantage there.
Now, Dave, does Zoom have the same option to bring the speaker into focus that Teams has?
What do you mean? The person talking? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Same thing. So, but yeah. So to that point, currently only 4 at a time, but hopefully they'll be able to change that soon. Another person was wondering, what do you need to be able to actually make calls for hardware? So right now I'm using a Bluetooth headset. So for instance, these are just headphones with a microphone built in. Tony, Steve, what are you guys using for this call?
Yeah, mine is the same thing. It's just a headset with a microphone that's using USB plugged into a desktop.
And I'm just using the built-in microphone in my laptop and the speakers.
So a lot of options for that one there. Another question, can people outside the organization be a part of the team, or is it just internal?
So I will say the integration is much more smooth with internal. There is the option to add external access for different organizations, assuming that they're using Teams. So you can grant access to an entirely different organization as a whole if you want to. That integration, it works, but it takes quite a bit to set up. So that's going to be much more involved. Now, if you wanted to add individual users, regardless where they work, where they're from, you can certainly do that. They're going to basically have guest access. They'll be able to communicate with you and sign in, but they will have to have a user created in Teams to be able to do that. They won't be able to host any meetings or do anything else. They're only going to be a participant in that organization, if that makes sense.
What about, can I run Teams on my Android phone, or I'd even add Android tablet?
You absolutely can. Yeah, that's one of the beauties of Microsoft Teams is that it's cross-platform. So it doesn't matter if you're using Windows on a desktop or a laptop, if you're running a Mac, if you're running an iPhone or an Android phone or any tablet, the application is going to work the same. The experience is going to be almost identical across all platforms. Going to have the same features, the same functions. It works incredibly well, especially from an end user perspective, where there's no big difference between any of the platforms.
Yeah, and so even beyond Android, it also works well on Apple. So a lot of people use iPhones or iPads or even Apple desktops or laptops. So I'm using an Apple computer right now, and it works really well. One of the other nice things too is that Tony, I think you've seen this. So for instance, let's say you're working, and I were to call Tony through Teams, either through a video or just audio call. He can pick that up on his iPhone, and if he decides he'd rather join it on the desktop program, there is an ability to go into that chat or call or whatever and pick it up there as well. So I've switched back and forth the number of times as I've been on my iPad, battery might be running low, or I want to switch to a different device. That's another feature as well that's actually coming pretty handy for me.
Yeah, it's been the same thing for me. That feature, that ability happens when you're part of a meeting, because you'll be able to see on your separate device that there's a meeting in progress that you're an attendee or a part of, and you can join that. So to Dave's point, I've used that times as well when I've had to stand up from my desk. So I join it on my cell phone, and I can take that call with me and be more mobile. It has come in very, very handy.
Although it is kind of funny, Tony, I've noticed I've got Teams, the app installed on my iPad, my iPhone. I've got it running on my computer, and whenever I get a call from somebody, it's calling on all those devices. So I may need to scale this back a little bit.
Yeah, just your notifications, because otherwise your house will light up. That is for sure.
Yeah. Next question here: if we're already using SharePoint, why would we use Teams?
Steve, I'll let you take that one.
Thanks, Tony. Well, because SharePoint's a file sharing platform, generally. It's a collaboration, but it's really focused around the files and the information that's contained within the SharePoint site. Teams utilizes that, but it also allows you to do messaging, chatting. It allows you to do video calls, phone calls, and it brings all that together. So in addition, it also it correlates all the users together, so that if you say, well, if you create a team of individuals, then they have the ability to collaborate together across chat, video, and files. So that's, yeah, it's different way of working together.
Yeah, I think it can be more of an enhancement. I mean, you have your SharePoint, which is going to take care of your files and your file collaboration by working on the same file at the same time. Where Teams comes into play is going to be primarily that communication piece. It's just going to help with chats or calls or whatever else where SharePoint lacks any of that ability. That's why the integration is so tight. So you can do both of those things. You can collaborate on a file and also communicate about that file at the same time.
Yeah.
A couple other questions that I think are kind of related. How do I buy Teams? And then also a question around, is there separate licensing for the apps? Or how does I guess maybe the question might be, how does this licensing, how do you purchase this?
Yeah, so the licensing with any licensing, it can oftentimes be very convoluted and tricky and whatever else. Microsoft has tried to make it simpler by having different levels of their products. So if you have an Office 365 business type license, that should include Teams as part of it. Teams is not something that's licensed individually. It's licensed as a package, and it's a monthly subscription that you'll pay per user. It goes along with the Word, with the Excel, Office, your hosted Exchange, email, does all of those things. So assuming you're on a plan that includes Teams, it will be included at no additional cost. If you're unsure of what your license is for your organization or for yourself personally, again, shoot me an email or give me a call. I'd be more than happy to dive into that and get you an answer.
The last thing too that we didn't touch on, but we're actually kind of demonstrating it, is that through the calendar, you have the option to meet now, where you can either do a video or audio call with somebody. You can schedule a meeting where people can jump in when it's time for the meeting. Or there's what we're doing right now, which is a live event. And there are some really cool things kind of behind the scenes that we can't show you because we're doing the meeting. But if you guys are presenting to your clients or need to talk to your customers or train people in an event like this, there's some really cool things behind the scenes where we can't show you because it's ongoing. But in terms of being able to queue up the slides that we're working on, Tony and Steve and I have the ability to kind of chat behind the scenes. There's some really cool functionality. So if any of you guys have the need, especially now where getting in front of your customers, your clients, is not as easy as it was a month or two ago, this live calendar really is pretty slick. Obviously, we are learning as we go. We've always been able to meet with our clients in person for the most part, but as things are changing, this could be a pretty cool function for you guys too, to be able to get in front of your clients.
Yeah, and Dave, to your point with that too, hosting this live event, it's working out great for us to present information to you. Gives you that chat field that you can go ahead or that question and answer field that you can ask questions, but there is no voice communication back and forth. When you're hosting a traditional Teams meeting, you will be able to collaborate and talk back and forth over your mics or host the video and see all of that. The live event just works differently in the fact that it's more of a presentation versus a phone call or a meeting or a conference call, however you want to look at that.
Yeah, and I think the last kind of cool feature to note that I don't know what the timeline is for this, but Teams is working on sort of you may have seen with the background blurs or being able to change your backgrounds. They're also working on that with audio. So I'm working from home today. My wife and I have 3 kids that are ages 6 and under, and I have had to lock the door to keep them all out, but there's some rambunctiousness outside. So in the future, they're also working on the ability to kind of mute out some of that background noise, or if you have people working in coffee shops, things like that. So I don't see any other new questions coming in that we haven't already answered, but yeah, if there is anything else, please let us know. Tony and Steve, thank you guys for putting this together and educating our clients. Hopefully you guys today learned something. We plan to share this video online, so if you want to look back or share it with somebody else, please do so. We'll send this out later. Also, please let us know if you would like some help or get some more information about getting Teams up and running for your organization. You may have already done this yourself. Maybe you're not quite sure. As Steve mentioned, it's not a big project, but making sure you do it correctly could save some work and headaches down the road. So last thing before we let you guys go is if you have requests for future topics that would help you or your organization, please let us know. And for now, we thank you for your time and have a great week.